Welcome to Back to the Father, a show about the journey of life focused on our final end, which is God Himself, our loving Father. And now, here's your host, Dave Palmer.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Back to the Father on this beautiful Friday afternoon. I am Dave Palmer, the host of this program. Cecil Anderson is running the board, and we're doing something today we've never done before. In all the years of doing Back to the Father, it's always been either live or nothing. We've either done a show or we just don't do a show. And so today, Cecil and I both are out for various reasons. We're not here live. And Cecil has a funeral that she's going to, and I had an event that I had to go to in Dallas today. And so we are pre-recording, and that means a couple of things. First of all, obviously no interaction. We rely a lot on interaction during the show. But since we are pre-recorded, you can't have live interaction. But if you're watching this on a recorded basis, which of course is the case for everybody because it's recorded, go ahead and leave your comments. And if we go back in after the fact, we can see what you thought about this topic. And we'd love to interact with you after the fact. God willing, we'll be back live next Friday. And then after that, we're going to have the Share-a-thon at the beginning of December. And then, of course, December is holiday season, so we'll be kind of hit and miss. But we'll try to record these so have some kind of consistency going forward. Anyways, this is a program, if you're here for the first time, where we focus on the teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas in his awesome Summa Theologia that he wrote in the 13th century. Never finished it. At the end, he said he had this mystical experience with God and said everything I've written is like straw, so I'm finished. And so the rest of us are like, Thomas, come on, man. We'd like to have the rest of it, but he didn't finish. His scribe did finish it for him. And so what I want to do today is, I don't think we're going to take the whole hour to do this, but I want to talk about 5 questions in the Summa that make up the first 5 questions of what's called the second part of the Summa. Now, the Summa is basically 4 parts. You have prima pars, which is the beginning, the first 119 questions. It has to do with God and the angels and human nature and creation and Adam and Eve and the fall and things like that. Also the governance of creatures as well, which is really interesting. And then in the second part, you have 2 parts. You have prima secunda and secunda secundae are the 2 parts of the second part. And this is very practical living. Like, okay, we have human nature. We're created by God, and our goal is to get back to God. That's why this show is called Back to the Father. Our goal is to return to the Father from whence we came. And so the middle part, those 2 sections, are instructing us how to get there through a life of virtue and through the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and the sacraments are going to come later. But how do we return to God? What are the practical ways? What is the will? What is the intellect? What are the passions? What are the appetites? How do these all interact to try to get us back to where we need to be? And then the third part is the incarnation, the sacraments, the last things. And so those are the basic 4 parts of the Summa. So these 5 questions of the beginning of Prima Secunda are all focused on man's last end. All right, what is our last end, and how are we going to get there? And so I always like to drag Cecil into the program, whether she wants to or not, because she's the only person I can see on a consistent basis. Remember, we used to have these high school interns who used to come in with us, Cecil? And
yeah, they made my life easier.
We ran them all off.
We did. And they had the audacity to graduate high school.
I know. Yeah, we had William and Jonathan von Weber-Hansberg was one of our interns for a while. We've had a number of them that have kind of come through, and we're always open to other people. And I remember Teresita sat in on the program one time with us as well. But we don't have anybody today, so I just have Cecil. And so, Cecil, what do you think is man's last end? Or how would you define the goal, the purpose of our last end? What would you say? What do you think Thomas is going to say here?
What I think Thomas is going to say, I have no idea. But like that, I mean, I do have an idea, but how he's going to say it is going to be very different than how I'll say it. But I guess my thought would be that if the final end for man would be to be living in constant glorifying of God, That would be my best kind of like
All right.
getting to a place where we're in a state of that's the only thing that we're doing the focus.
But just with God, contemplating God,
Mm-hmm.
you say glorifying God, which is interesting because it almost sounds like we're doing something for God, right?
Oh,
we're glorifying Him, but I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I mean,
worshiping God,
Him, and a lot of people would say, "Gosh, it sounds so boring. Just doing one thing, for the rest of our life, just kind of sitting there." But I don't think it's going to be boring at all. So what this is like I said, 5 questions. There's 8 articles in each of these questions. So really, I'm going to, in the course of these 30 minutes or so, go over 40 questions. But I'm going to do it very quickly, and I'm not going to belabor any particular point. But I want to just show you the train of thought of St. Thomas Aquinas and just kind of see where he goes with this. So the first of the 5 questions he asks, again, prima secunda, question 1 says, of man's last end. Okay, so what is it? And whether it belongs to man to act for an end. All right, so that's a very practical question because you think about it, you woke up this morning, the alarm went off, you hit it or you snoozed, and from that moment, would you not agree that you were acting for an end, right? You had something, okay, I got to get up, I got to go eat breakfast, I got to, take the kids to school or, I got to take a shower. Everything is very ordered, but it's ordered for an end. So Thomas is going to say, yeah, definitely. We act for an end, and he's going to talk about how our acting for an end may be a little bit different than irrational creatures as well. So Article 2, whether it's proper to the rational creature to act for an end. Now, whenever Thomas talks about something being proper, it means like, is this specific? Like, are we the only creatures that act for an end? Okay, and he will say it's through a deliberate will. Okay, are we the only ones that do that, or do our irrational creatures act for an end? So I see you're pondering this question.
I am pondering.
So what do you think? Do you think do muskrats and grasshoppers and frogs, do they act for an end?
I wouldn't say like end, like an overall end like us. I think they're acting onto like the next thing that they need. Like, oh, I need food, so I'm going to go act towards, you know what I mean? Like hunting. It's not like they have this overall, like, I need food so that I can sustain my life, so I can be healthy, so I can do this, so I can do, they're more like, I'm hungry, I need food.
Yeah. But I mean, and I see what you're saying, but it's just kind of like one thing after the next.
Yeah.
Okay, I just ate, now I want to take a nap.
Yeah.
But they're not thinking about it. They're not pondering the idea of taking a nap.
Right.
And that's where we can think about thinking, which is unique to human beings, is that we can, we're conscious of our consciousness. We can, if I desire to take a nap, which pretty much is the case any moment I'm awake,
Right.
I'm thinking, I'm probably in the back of my mind, I'd rather be taking a nap. But I can think about napness, I can think about what a nap is, and then I can pursue it, with a will. But the animals, they don't really think about it that deeply, right? The animals are not as deep as human beings. That's why none of them watch Back to the Father. Okay, we have very, very few irrational creatures watching this program. All right, whether human acts are specified by their end, yeah, we have, like I said, something in mind, like napness or lunch or breakfast or a shower, and that's our end at that moment that we want to get to, right? Whether there's one last end of human life. Now this is interesting because we've said before on this program that our ultimate goal, the thing that our will seeks ultimately, is happiness, right? And everybody by default seeks happiness. And so that's the end of everybody. Everybody has the same end. It's happiness. And the will seeks the good, which is going to be our ultimate happiness. So Thomas is going to say, really, we're all kind of directed to the same thing. We all want to be happy, but how we go about that is going to be a little bit different. Can one have several last ends? He says it's impossible for one man's will to be directed at the same time to diverse things as last ends. Okay, so again, we all want to be happy, but what he is going to make that, but then you'd say, well, if that's the case, we'd all be acting exactly the same. We'd all be making the same choices. Why would there be sin if everybody is, we're all kind of unified and homogenous in our desire for the last end? Well, he says, well, yeah, that's true, but it's going to come into like the means to the end. And this is where choice and intention and all these different aspects of our particular acts come in. is that, yeah, we all want to be happy, but for some people, happiness is going to go in the form of, taking drugs or, committing adultery or fornication, and some people it's going to adoration or going to mass or, studying the saints. And so everybody's trying to be happy, but how they go about it is going to be the difference. And this is where virtue is going to come in, which is a big part of this Summa. All right, whether man, okay, I love this one. Article 6, whether man wills all whatever he wills for the last end. All right, so when Sissel got up this morning and had breakfast, okay, what did you have for breakfast?
It's a piece of toast. I was not doing well this morning.
You didn't put anything on it?
No, I put some butter on it.
Okay, so, yeah.
Yeah.
No, like jam or anything?
I mean, yeah, I had 2 pieces of toast. One was with butter, one was with butter and jam.
Okay. See, the plot's thickening.
It does.
Here, isn't it?
You get more information every time you ask a question.
So when Sissel gets up and she decides she's going to have 2 pieces of toast and one's going to have butter on it and one's going to have butter and jam on it, is that directed to her ultimate happiness? I mean, and Tom would say, yeah, because it's tending to her ultimate happiness. She's eating because her body is hungry, and her body is for the soul, and the soul has intellect and will, and intellect and will are directed towards the true and the good. So if you kind of peel back the layers a few times, you'll say, yeah, ultimately she had that piece of toast, directed to her last end. Whether all men have the same last end, yeah, ultimately they do. All right. Whether other creatures concur in that last end, well, our last end for everybody is God. God draws all things back to himself, but in a different way. Like they can't contemplate God. The dragonfly is never going to be able to experience the beatific vision. He's never going to be able to contemplate God, or, like Sissel said at the beginning, was it glorify? I think you mentioned the word that Sissel used about, final end. All right, so that's the first question. We got one under our belt. All right, and the other ones actually will go a little bit quicker than this. And I feel like saying, does anybody have any questions? But there's nobody that's listening to us right now.
Bueller?
You're the only one, Sissel. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions right now, actually.
Okay, all right.
Big surprise.
All right, so question 2, of those things in which man's happiness consists. And what he does here is interesting because he's going to go through a number of things that people place as their final end, which really are just means to an end, but not the final end. And so it's like if you're, I live in North Texas, and if I wanted to go to Florida, it would make sense for me to go through Mississippi, through Jackson, Mississippi. And that's a means to an end of getting to Florida. But if I stop in Jackson, Mississippi, and that's where I'm done, well, that was a means to an end of getting to where I was supposed to go, but I never got there because I stopped. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with Jackson, Mississippi, but it wasn't my final end. It's not where I intended to go. So if you think about these things as being Jackson, Mississippi, which I used to live in Jackson, Mississippi, so no offense there. But, okay, so does man's happiness consist in wealth? Does his happiness consist in honors? Does it consist in fame and glory? In power, in any bodily good? Okay, these are all the articles that are in the second question. Does it consist in pleasure? Article 6. And then Article 7 says, is it some good of the soul that constitutes man's happiness? And then can any created good constitute man's happiness? And what he's going to say ultimately is no, for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, none of these fully satisfy. You get you go to your favorite restaurant, you get your favorite food. I love margaritas. I love a good frozen margarita. Go there with my wife and get some salt around the rim, and I just sit there and I look at that margarita and I'm enjoying the time with my wife, and then I finish it and we leave, and then the next day I'm like, man, I want another margarita. Okay, so that margarita didn't satisfy me, and nothing here on earth satisfies. And money is only in order to get something else. The physical pleasures or the food or whatever is just to satisfy the body, like Sissel's piece of toast this morning. It didn't ultimately satisfy her. I bet you she's probably hungry again. Yeah, she's not.
Yep.
That's not gonna. You're not like, I'm done. I've got everything I want. So that was question 2. Question 3 of these 5 says, what is happiness? Okay, so it's clearly not wealth and power and honors and fame and material, goods. So what is it? And then he says, is it something uncreated? And ultimately, it's going to be God, and God is uncreated, right? Is it an operation? So now he's getting into kind of the nuts and bolts. It's like, how do we achieve happiness? Is happiness an operation? Is it something that we do? And he says, yeah, in a sense it is. It's something that we have to do in order to achieve. We have to, cooperate with God. God isn't going to just infuse the happiness in us. Is it the sensitive or the intellective part? Well, it's an intellectual operation. And is it in the intellect or the will? Ultimately, it's both, but it's John 17:3 says, this is eternal life, to know thee, the one true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast known. So to know God would be an act of the intellect. And let's see, he says, okay, I don't want to do that one. Okay, does happiness consist in the knowledge of separate substances, the angels? Okay, angels he calls separate substances. So by merely knowing an angel, are you going to be happy? Not really. I mean, no offense to the angels, but that's not going to make you happy, because ultimately it's the knowledge of God that's going to make you happy. And then he finally gets to it, okay? This third question of prima secunda, he says, whether man's happiness consists in the vision of the divine essence. That doesn't mean a bodily vision with our eyes. It means that we have an intellectual vision, a knowledge of God. We come to know God, but we can't do that on our own. We can't wake up and say, okay, today I'm going to have a vision of the divine essence. Okay, this is going to be it. I'm going to be ultimately happy. It's only through his grace, and it's really only after death that we're going to be able to have that really, really good vision of the divine essence. All right, question 4. Any questions out there? I just say that, okay? It's pre-recorded, so you can't ask any questions. But maybe there are some questions that you're going to type in, and then we'll come back later and we'll answer the questions, after the fact. And so, okay, of those things that are required for happiness. Okay, so all right, so now we know the vision of the divine essence is our happiness. Well, what do we got to do to get there, right? I already said it's going to require God's grace. It's going to, God's going to have to make that first move and help us out. And is delight required for happiness? Delight is something that accompanies happiness. When you're happy, you're going to be delighted, right? Let's see. Then he says, is comprehension necessary for happiness? Happiness would ultimately be you'll never comprehend God, according to Aquinas, because comprehension means you fully know something in every aspect. So comprehension is not possible even in heaven. Rectitude of the will, is it necessary for happiness? Now, this one's interesting, because rectitude of the will means that our will is aligned with goodness, right? And so in order to pursue happiness, we have to have a will that's in rectitude with goodness and in line with where we need to be. Because if you're out there sinning and committing moral sins and doing things offensive to God, you certainly are not going to be happy. But in heaven, the will be irrevocably united to the good. And so we can't turn away from God once we're in heaven, because it's like, if you had something perfect, why would you ever turn it away from it? Is the body necessary for happiness? Cecil, I'm going to drag you in on this one, okay? So do you think the body is necessary for happiness? Have we ever talked about this?
I don't know if we've ever talked about this.
I think we talked about everything at some point.
Well, we probably did at some point. Ooh, I hit a button and we went black. That was cool. Let's see. Is the body necessary for happiness?
So,
I mean, we as humans have always had bodies. God created us with a body. I'm going to say yes, just because the heck of it. I mean, okay. But because God, hold up a second, though.
Change his mind.
I'm thinking here. I'm still loading. I would say that, okay. I don't know. I should just commit. I'll just stick with the yes, even though I think it might be no.
Well, Thomas always says, there's two ways of looking at this, right? There's here on earth, we have to have a body because we come to know things through our body. Right, you would never know really your best friend unless you had some kind of sense experience with her, and you saw her and you talked to her and you're able to hug her or whatever. So we need our body in order to, have happiness. I mentioned the frozen margarita with salt around the rim and, spending time with my wife. Those are really hard things to do if you don't have a body. Drinking a margarita is really difficult if you don't have a body. So the body's necessary for happiness here. But we know that the definition of death is that the soul and the body separate. So now, after death, before the general judgment, before the reunion of body and soul, you're going to have a separated soul. Now, can that soul be happy? Well, yeah, because it's in heaven, but it doesn't have a body. So Aquinas is going to have this rather perplexing teaching saying that the body is not absolutely necessary for happiness in eternal life, because otherwise the separated souls wouldn't be happy. But they don't have a body, clearly, because the bodies are back here. But the separated soul still longs for a body. Why? Because it's not a human being if it's not a body-soul composite. But ultimately, it doesn't have to have a body. But Thomas has this interesting teaching where he says that in heaven, the glory of the soul will overflow into the body. And that's why the body will literally shine. There will be clarity. There will be, like glowing, and you'll be, and that's why I think God created lightning bugs, because you look at lightning bugs are one of the most fascinating creatures around, but they literally glow. Their bodies glow, and I think that's a little prefiguration. Do you like lightning bugs?
I mean, yes. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen. I've not seen many in person myself, actually.
So not even when you were a kid, did you see them?
I don't remember seeing that many. Well, so I lived in Florida for part of my childhood, and then here in Texas, and I just don't remember seeing many in the areas that we lived in. I remember reading lots of books about them and seeing pictures of them, but I don't think I actually ever, like caught one myself and put it in a jar, so to speak. You know?
Yeah. When I first moved to Dallas back in the mid '70s, there were like lightning bugs all over the place. But I think as areas become habited by human beings, the lightning bugs lose interest and they check out. But I do remember going to Oklahoma a number of years ago with Paula, and the kids were quite young, and we were in a very, kind of woody area, and there were just tons of lightning bugs everywhere. But they're so beautiful, and I hope there's still lots of lightning bugs out there somewhere. All right, this one I think, Sissel, you'll appreciate. Is the fellowship of friends necessary for happiness?
Oh.
Is the fellow you're somebody I know who really values friendship.
Yes.
You love your friends. You have a lot of friends. You're with people all the time.
Yep.
So do you think the fellowship of friends is necessary for happiness?
First things, I think that I thought when you started saying the fellowship that you were going to say the fellowship of the ring. Was the fellowship of the ring necessary for happiness? And I was going to say yes. No.
Lord of the Rings is necessary for happiness. Yes.
I don't know. I'm always hesitant when it comes to these things because you're like, well, God can, fulfill a lot of happiness, like all happiness. However, I do think that most saints have written about how vital holy friendships are in the faith journey. So I'm going to say yes with a small dose of no.
Well, I love this. I'm just going to, I haven't read a whole lot because, reading passages of the Summa probably doesn't make for the best, broadcast. But this one is really interesting. He says, if we speak of happiness in this life, the happy man needs friends, as the philosopher Aristotle says. Not indeed to make use of them, since he suffices himself, nor to delight in them, since he possesses perfect delight in the operation of virtue, but for the purpose of a good operation, that he may do good for them. I find that really interesting. So we don't have friends so that they can do something for us. He's saying we have friends so that we can we can love them. We can.
Well, it's like, it's kind of, I don't know, when you think about it, like even with the spouse, which is, a friendship, but it's, the whole point is that you're trying to get them to heaven and vice versa. So it is, you're doing something for them.
Yeah.
And in turn, that does help you, I think, because it helps you grow in your holiness.
And that he may delight in seeing them do good, and again, that he may be helped by them in his doing good. So there's this kind of mutual reciprocity with friendship. Then he says, but if we speak of perfect happiness, which will be in our heavenly fatherland, the fellowship of friends is not essential to happiness, since man has the entire fullness of his perfection in God. So you kind of see where he's going there. is that if we are united to God and we're perfectly happy and we have the beatific vision, it would seem a little weird to be like, yeah, this is kind of nice, but I sure would like to hang out with my friends. That's not to say we won't hang out with our friends in heaven, but it's not going to be necessary, and it's not going to be something that will make us happier than being united to God. All right, the final question is the attainment of happiness. All right, this is the final of the 5 of Prima Secunda, the whole last end part of the Summa. And he says whether man can attain happiness. He said, yeah, man can attain happiness because we have intellects, and intellects are and will are directed to the universal true, the universal good. So we were created in order to be happy. Other creatures were not created to achieve this kind of happiness. Can one man be happier than another? Yes, because again, and that analogy of driving to Florida and stopping in Mississippi, well, that man's not going to be as happy. And again, no offense to Mississippi, I love Mississippi, but he didn't achieve his full happiness. He didn't go all the way that he could. Can one be happy in this life? Well, you can have a certain participation of happiness, and it'd be crazy to say nobody can be happy in this life, because people would say, well, I certainly have experienced, happiness. Can happiness once had be lost? Here, yes. In heaven, no, for reasons that I've already explained. And then let's see, whether man can attain happiness by his natural powers. Okay, by what I've already said, yeah, in this life, we can achieve happiness by our natural powers. We can, live a life of acquired virtue and that kind of thing. But ultimately, in heaven, we have to have God's help in order to be perfectly happy. We're not going to ever achieve that on our own. Whether man attains happiness through the action of some higher creature. All right, do angels make us happy? And let's see. He says, since every creature is subject to the laws of nature, from the very fact that its power and action are limited, that which surpasses created nature cannot be done by the power of any creature. Okay, so ultimately God is what makes us happy. That doesn't mean the angels can't help us along the way. They certainly do. They can protect us. They can enlighten us. They can teach us about God and move our affections and that kind of stuff. And let's see, I think that is going to be it. Does every man desire happiness? This will be the last one.
Yes.
see how definitive you got in that one?
Yeah, see that one. That one's easy.
Happiness can be considered in 2 ways. Okay, surprise, surprise. First, according to the general notion of happiness, and thus of necessity, every man desires happiness. For the general notion of happiness consists in the perfect good. But since good is the object of the will, the perfect good of a man is that which entirely satisfies his will. Consequently, to desire happiness is nothing else than the desire that one's will be satisfied. And so everybody wants to be happy. With the thing that we need to understand, though, is that our true happiness is union with God, and all these other things like power and material goods and sensual goods and money and fame and these kind of things. They are goods, but they're not the ultimate good. They are goods that are a means to an end, and if used properly, they can help us achieve our final end. And so we all ultimately want to be happy. We want to unite with God. It's just a matter of whether or not we are going to order ourselves properly, take advantage of all the things that God has provided for us, like grace and the sacraments and the virtues, the theological virtues in particular, to direct us to that final end. All right, speaking of the final end, this is finally the end.
The final ending
of this program, all right?
Very smooth.
Oh, man, I'm reminded, one of these weeks we're going to drag Tom Centeri on this program, and we're going to talk some Aquinas with our new general manager of Fort Worth, okay, Tom Centeri. He's a great guy. He's smart, and he would be fun to have on. Maybe next Friday I can drag him on if he has a little bit of time to come on the show with me. All right, he's giving me the thumbs up, so he said yes. That's a good plan. All right, well, thank you, Sissel, and thanks everybody. Again, this has been a pre-recorded Back to the Father, and if you want to comment, we'll go back and see some of the comments, and also don't forget to join our email list. All you do is, if you're not on it already, email backtothefather@grnonline.com, and we'll let you know each Friday what the show's about and what's going on, and just a reminder to tune in 1 o'clock Central Time every Friday. So that is going to do it. God bless you. Have a great rest of your day, a great weekend, and God willing, we'll see you live next Friday for Back to the Father. God bless you.
Thanks for joining us for Back to the Father. And don't forget, the glory of God is the human person fully alive. If you have comments about the show, email Dave Palmer at grnonline.com.